Hello, I'm going to talk about bloating. How does it appear and how can we prevent it? The bloating appears because we have gas, intestinal gas, that is produced by some bacteria that lives in our intestine. These bacteria digest, they eat the food that we have ingested, that we have eaten, and decompose this food, giving gas and toxins. This happens because there is a bacterial overgrowth and the food has got stuck in the intestine during enough time to let the bacteria ferment and putrefy this food. Currently, we used to have several meals a day, 3 or 4, but normally we have only one bowel movement a day, and this is not enough. With 3 or 4 meals a day, we should have several bowel movements a day too. This fact makes that large amounts of waste stagnate in the intestine with a consequent fermentation or putrefaction that cause the bloating. The bacterial overgrowth is caused because they enjoy a lot of food that we cannot digest. There are different reasons why we cannot digest certain food. For example, it may be indigestible, or there can be a food intolerance, or we have eaten beyond our digestion capacity because of an excess of food, or we are submitted to a stress and we cannot digest, or any distress or any situation that made that our body was not available to digest that food. So when bacteria is fed, they thrive in our intestine and release gas in their metabolism as well as toxins. Faced to this problem, there are mainly 2 options. I suggest the current one, the most popular one that is advised by most doctors and nutritionists and therapists, is taking antibiotics, antifungals, or any kind of treatment such as colon hydrotherapy, for example, in order to remove all these bacteria or fungi or parasites. This option works quite well in the short term, but it's not sustainable in the long term, because if the same nutrition is not changed, the bacteria is still feeding. So we are going to kill these bacteria, but they are going to appear again. Is very similar to what happens to ants when we are in the field. While there are some food on the floor, they will appear again even if we kill them. Another issue is that this kind of medicines or treatments cannot be taken for too much long. It cannot be followed forever. In some moment, when we stop taking this treatment, these bacteria, fungi, parasites, etc., will appear again. So this option is not sustainable in the long term. It doesn't work in the long term. So I suggest a second one, that is changing the nutrition or nutrition habits or lifestyle in order to improve our digestion and the intestinal transit. So in order to improve the intestinal movements, the food that slows down and blocks the passage of quicker food should be avoided. We have to take into account that fruits are digested much faster than other foods. For example, meat and fish can take up to 3 days to pass through the intestine, through the digestive system from the mouth to the anus. While fruits do this trip in just 12 or maximum 24 hours. So the consumption of these animal products block the passage of fruit through the intestine. Starches and fats can be problematic too, can also take longer to digest than fruit. So we can imagine the same as a road where at the end of the road there's a truck that is blocking the passage of cars, and they make some noise, they honk because they cannot go through the road, and the neighbors blame the cars for this noise. But if we look the window, we will see that the culprit of this noise is the truck that is blocking the road at far away. So the cars are similar to fruit, and the truck represents fish, meat, starch, and fats. So when fruit is blocked in the digestive system, it ferments, producing toxins and toxic gases, which are the cause of the bloating. Unfortunately, many doctors and nutritionists diagnose this as SIBO, a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or a fructose intolerance, and recommend a FODMAP diet, which bans most fruits and vegetables. But fruits and vegetables, as we have seen, are not the source of the problem. In cases where a FODMAP diet will be needed, I recommend, instead of removing fruits and vegetables, I recommend to avoid the animal products and other foods that may slow down the bowel transit, such as grains, especially cereals with gluten and refined cereals. Other food that could also be a problem are lactose of dairy products, mainly in adults because of the lack of the enzyme to digest lactose, which is lactase. Since the weaning, the production of this enzyme decreases progressively until it disappears. So most of adults have a problem with lactose. Another food that can be problematic are legumes, pulses, and beans, etc. They contain oligosaccharides, which are indigestible. And there are a long list of other conditions that we will have to take into account to have a good digestion. For example, avoiding the excess of food, eating too quickly, we should chew thoroughly, be careful with food combining. Water can have a negative impact on digestion, although most of the meals need water because they are dry. For example, meat, fish, potatoes, grains, legumes, nuts. So there are many other advices, conditions, but I think that the main issue is to keep a healthy intestinal transit.